Hello, my friends. So today I'd like to talk a little bit about the question of whether America is the prime mover, so to speak, of globalism in the world, or whether other countries which are supposedly nationalistic, supposedly independent and autonomous, like Russia, like China, whether those countries are truly nationalistic and independent, or if they have been infected just as much as America with a higher level empire, so to speak. Well, is the American empire the real globalist empire, or is there a more higher level hidden financial empire that is behind movements, economic, political, cultural, toward globalism? And this, in this particular video, I'm going to get into a little bit about Russia, just a little dip into the waters of Russia, a little look under the iceberg, so to speak, of Russia, to see how much of an influence international financial figures and their globalist agenda actually has in Russia. And this was prompted by reading this article written by a well-known figure in the alt-right called Learning to Love a Multipolar World by Jeffrey D. Sachs. Oh, wait. Learning to... Oh, I'm sorry. I meant How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love Multipolarity by Keith Woods. Sorry, these are very easy to confuse. In this article on Radix, Richard Spencer's journal website, Woods gets into the idea that removing Western colonial rule, removing the influence of American unipolar hegemony, will allow capital, or will allow tradition and finance, or tradition and identity to reassert itself. And that there are real signs that globalism is coming to an end because the hegemony of America is coming to an end. And because of this, liberalism, feminism, secularism, and materialism will also come to an end. He says the values that have created a spiritual rot across the West are in a symbiotic relationship with American hegemony. Each relies on the other for its propagation. With the disintegration of the American empire, nationalists and traditionalists should take solace. They should be very hopeful for the future, because once the American empire is taken down, he says, these globalist trends will also cease to be. And he talks a lot about China, which I think I'm going to touch on in a future video. But in this particular video, I want to touch on Russia. I want to talk about Russia. He says Russia's transformation, I should say culturally and militarily, Russia has charted an independent course of action. Is this true? Russia's transformation from a failed state of demoralized people subjected to the worst effects of liberal governance and privatization in the early 1990s to the independent, religious, and nationalist state it is today looks like a potential best-case scenario for other Western countries looking to what comes after globalization. Is this true? Is Russia truly an independent, nationalist state? Or is it something else? Is it some sort of intermediary stage? Is Russia at an intermediary stage from the more, well, the Soviet Union was itself a globalist state. They wanted to have world revolution, communist world revolution, which itself is a globalist doctrine. But is Russia really the nationalist sort of isolated state that people seem to think it is? I did one little Google search to just start researching this, just to see at what step in the program Russia is at. And so I Googled Russian diversity, just to see what people are saying in the media about Russian diversity. And this article from the Calvert Journal popped up. And we'll talk about what the Calvert Journal is, because there's a whole lot to get into here. I was really surprised that this was the first result on Google. If you type in, let's see, Russian diversity, and you go to news, Russia's real face is diverse. This was published 3 days ago. And these Gen Z artists want to ... So, first article popping up on Google. These Gen Z artists want to talk about it. Russian diversity is one of the most fascinating aspects of the country's culture, but also one of the least known. Globally, Russia is often perceived as a homogeneously white country, but in fact, Russia has a long and complicated history of immigration and cultural exchange. With more than 185 recognized nationalities, even if that history is rarely acknowledged by the federal government or in the country's mainstream media. Well, it turns out, it seems that this history is being acknowledged by the Russian federal government. We will see who the founder of this journal was and what positions he holds. He's at the tippy top. So, just to scroll through this article, Russia's Korean community are connecting with their creativity. He's got this nice little eye symbol going on that we've seen in Western media. Whatever that means. Probably doesn't mean anything. Tajik Russian musicians. Very diverse. Buratian artist. Very, look at her wearing the suit. This is very traditional. Or is it anti-traditional? A black Russian. Very interesting. So, but this is just one journal article, right? This is just one little article from an insignificant, the Calvert Journal. But is the Calvert Journal really insignificant? Or does it represent a trend that is being pushed from the tippy top, as I said, of the Russian government, of the Russian establishment? Is this promotion of immigration and cultural exchange something that is being promoted by the highest figures in Russian politics and finance? Let's find out. The Calvert 22 Foundation. This is the foundation that established the Calvert Journal. says that their director is Nona Materkovna. And by the way, 22, what does that mean? Why did they choose the word 22? It's in 29 countries, it's not in 22. I mean, this is just a tiny bit of just possible speculation, but 22, there are 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet, and in the Kabbalah there are 22 paths between the Sephirot. But that probably means nothing. But anyway, in 2012, the foundation established a partnership with the Smolny College, the Faculty of Liberal Arts and Sciences at St. Petersburg State University. And this is a major university, St. Petersburg State University. It says on their Wikipedia page, it's a federal-owned educational institution, one of the oldest and largest. The university has a reputation for having educated the majority of Russia's political elite, including presidents Vladimir Putin and Dmitry Medvedev, both of whom studied law. And it says here that the director is Nona Materkovna, but it turns out there's another individual who is a founder of Calvert 22 Foundation, which explains how they got this partnership with the Smolny College, the Faculty of Liberal Arts and Sciences. And I found this information in a blog post from 2014 called Hipsters and Investment Banksters: Reflections on the Limits of the Calvert Experience. It says, let me find it. This talks about how Calvert has been promoted by Western media. Here's Nona Materkovna, who I mentioned, the director, with Ekau Eshun, a very Russian gentleman. But it says here, this is the interesting bit, there is, of course, a simple explanation for this, for the fact that it's so heavily promoted in Western media. Or it was. I don't know if it is anymore, but it seems like it is. There is a simple explanation for this. If you look on the About page of the journal, you will find that the founders of the journal are Nona Materkovna and Alexei Kudrin. Shortly after the site of the Calvert Journal was operational, the sister Calvert 22 Foundation agreed a strategic partnership with VTB Capital, an investment bank. But who is this Alexei Kudrin? If you go to the About page of Calvert, the current About page, it doesn't say anything about him. The team shows the only founder and director is Nona Materkova. So I had to go and check the date here. February 5th, 2014. I went to the Wayback Machine to February 9th, and it turns out, sure enough, founders, Nona Materkova and Alexei Kudrin. Why are they hiding the fact that Alexei Kudrin was a founder of this institute, or this foundation, and the journal? Which back then described itself as an avant-garde Russian culture magazine, bringing tremendous change to Russia. Well, Kudrin, turns out, as it says in this, we could keep reading this. Here's a picture of Kudrin and Putin. Kudrin himself is one who has worked with President Putin since St. Petersburg days. It says that he has a fall from grace in 2011, but the facts say otherwise. If we go to Alexei Kudrin, This guy is like at the top level of finance governance in Russia, in the Russian establishment, and he is the dean of the Faculty of Liberal Arts and Sciences at St. Petersburg State University, which explains how they got this partnership with St. Petersburg University. So really, they didn't establish a partnership in 2012. They've had a partnership since the beginning. He's the dean of that college. But anyway, he was also the finance minister from May 18th, 2000 to the 26th of September, 2011. And he was appointed by Vladimir Putin. He also worked in the presidential administration of Boris Yeltsin. He was deputy prime minister from 2000 to 2004, and again beginning in 2007. This man is top level in the financial sector of Russia's establishment. And it seems also top level of the cultural establishment. He's on the board of trustees for the Mariinsky Theater, one of the biggest, most important theaters in Russia. So these financiers getting involved in culture and cultural influence. Really fascinating. He's on the board of trustees for the European University at St. Petersburg as well. So these are, once again, highly influential institutions. And he is influencing the influential institutions. Like it said on this page, the St. Petersburg University has a reputation for educating the majority of Russia's political elite. So this guy is involved in setting the curricula for one of the most influential colleges, universities in Russia. And this, Calvert 22, is the sort of influence he's having. This is his journal. Diversity, immigration, cultural exchange, all of the trademarks of globalism. And also, well, it's not just Alexei here. It's not just Kudrin. Where is she? Nona is also at this level. Head of Department of Major Investment Projects, St. Petersburg Finance Committee. Positions with the World Bank, Deutsche Bank, other financial and commercial institutions. These top-level financial elites are the ones controlling cultural influence in Russia at this point, or having an extremely disproportionate amount of influence on the cultural agenda of Russia. And this guy, it said that in that article, in this one that I read, that he had a fall from grace with Putin. But it's absolutely not true. It says here, he was nominated by the State Duma to be the Chamber of Accounts, or the chairman of the Accounts Chamber, and Vladimir Putin nominated him for the chairman. And on the 22nd of May, they approved Kudrin in office with 264 votes in favor. So he's still involved at the highest levels, not just in a state-controlled university, controlling their college of culture, basically, their liberal arts college, but also still involved in their financial sector of control. And Kudrin was the president also of this international organization of supreme audit institutions, which is yet another bureaucratic, elite-owned, elite-controlled international financial institution that has no basis in America or Britain or Germany or Russia or China, but is international, controlled by a hidden financial elite that doesn't have one home country, but uses many different countries and jumps from country to country as it's convenient. So, it also mentioned in this article VTB Capital. VTB Capital, a major investment bank in Russia, was founded with bankers from Deutsche Bank's Moscow office. So we have Deutsche Bank, an international globalist financial institution controlled by you-know-whos, setting up capital investment banking in Russia, having this incredible influence in Russia. The things that they are investing in are cultural change, to promote globalist ideas. So, and who's the leader of this? Yuri Soloviev. Worked with the Lehman Brothers in London, Deutsche Bank. As part of the World Economic Forum's Global Leadership Program, he was awarded the title Young Global Leader between 2009 and 2014. These networks of influence are not based in America. This is not the American empire that is promoting globalism. This is a financial empire, an international, rootless financial empire that has branches in Russia, that has branches in China, branches in the US, in Britain, in all of the major powers. There's no... To say that it's the American empire that is promoting globalism is so far off the mark. It's so... It's hard to even know what to call it. It's not true. It's the best way to call it. So Soloviev, Soloviev, however you say it. There are other Solovievs involved in business and finance. One is in America. This guy is one of the largest landowners in America. And it says here he uses the Russian spelling of the family name just to give a little confirmation that Soloviev is one of the tribes. Or one of the tribe, I should say. His father, it says on his Wikipedia page, is from a you-know-who-ish family. And here's another page where it mentions it's the equivalent of singer or sanger. So we have you-know-who-ish investment capital banks and top-level Russian finance ministers, prime ministers, deans of the most influential university in Russia, the dean of their cultural college, their liberal arts and sciences college. You've got people working with British Council, working with international investment projects, all coming together to promote diversity, to promote immigration, what's the right word? To rid us of the delusion that Russia is a homogeneously white country, and promoting this idea of cultural exchange and immigration and progress and changing Russia's identity, all of them coming together in this Calvert journal project to push culture, toward the globalist direction. And they're already occupying the top positions of leadership in Russia. This guy he's known Putin since they were both deputy mayors of St. Petersburg back in like 1993 to 1996. These guys go way back. So what I think is that Russia is not any kind of best case scenario. It is not a post-globalist society. It is not an independent nationalist society. It is ruled by the same international financial institutions and elite banker families that control the West. And they, I think, are just maybe 15, 20 years behind. That's it. Maybe one generation, two at the most, behind what we're seeing in America, Britain, France, Germany. It's just happening at a slower pace, in a different way. The feminism, the diversity, migrant workers being promoted, all of that is going on in this top-level funded, top-level controlled Calvert Journal project. And this is just one little example. And if the guy who's controlling the Calvert Journal is also controlling the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences in St. Petersburg, that I reiterate has an inordinate amount of influence on the Russia's political elite, what do you think is going to happen in 1 or 2 generations when these people who have been educated in these kinds of institutions under this kind of curriculum go on to become the policymakers? They're not far behind. So I'm kind of repeating myself at this point, but I'm going to do a video next on China, and maybe another video on Russia if I find another good example. But this really was striking gold on that first link with the Calvert Journal. Russia's real face is diverse, says Alexei Kudrin, close associate with Vladimir Putin and the rest of Russia's elite. Oh, which reminds me, one individual who calls this out is, I think, this individual, who was a military intelligence officer, old school military individual, attempted the assassination of a you-know-who-ish businessman, and Vladimir Kvatchkov, he agrees with me that that Russia is controlled by a Judeo-Masonic mafia, so to speak, if that's the word you want to give it. This is actually pretty funny. Kvatchkov did not admit or deny his role in the assassination attempt, instead declaring the act not criminal, and that the elimination of Chubai and the present Russian government was justified as Russia is under the occupation of a Judeo-Masonic mafia. That is a pretty Chad move. Doesn't admit or deny his role, but declares that it was not criminal. So, just someone who agrees with my assessment. That's all for today. Thank you for watching.